It is about an hour early for the sun to start coming up for these guys, but I just missed them, so I decided to turn their east light bulb on an hour early. Oh, my kitties are still sleeping. Do you see them on the gravel? It's an Odo having his breakfast. There's a sleeping kitty. Sorry, I can't help the baby talk with my fishes. Can't help myself. The Endlers love hanging out in this little flower vase. Oh, you're up early. I think this is my cat that never sleeps. He was doing sprints across the front all last night. I hope it's okay. Gosh, my glass is really yucky through this lens. It doesn't look like bad, but it is. I might do some scrub-a-dubbing today. My plants are so happy with their new Floramax bulb. It's a different spectrum. I'll have to do some more filming when the when all the lights come on in a couple hours. But this stem is a bit of a temple plant, and it's one that I really felt strongly about when I met it. But it really didn't do well through all the turbulence of the treatments of the tank. And I thought I lost it, but that stem with this new light is just going. So it's like, I don't know, it's doing exactly what I hoped it would do, stuffed in the spiderwood. And it pleases me so. And the little grass pup is just underneath that the clear tubing. And it's doing super well. Can see him trying to come up. It looks like he's coming up under, but he's not. The pink stem. Oh, hi, mister. Oh, you're a girl. Never mind. Wait, are you a girl? No, wait. They're so funny. I love them. I only have, I took the last of their guys. How many did I get? I think I have 8. How funny is that? Anyway, yeah, I want to give them a good, 20. I want them to have a big school, and this is a 20-gallon tank. You can have about an inch of fish per gallon. Yeah, it is what it is. We have to be good gods when we're doing fish math. I don't think 8 is enough for them to have a thriving school mentality. Oh yeah, I forgot why. Yeah. Okay, so I started this because I wanted to do story time again. Oh goodness, I miss my fishes. Okay, but I can't have you looking in the fish tank while I'm reading on account of the internet doesn't live over there. Okay, give me just a sec. This is a story written by, it's an old folk tale. Okay. Lefty Lucy. I love that the eye people put left and right on the earbuds because people like me. Okay, so this story I discovered in a book by Clarissa Pinkola Estes called Women Who Run with Wolves. And it's actually, she didn't write it. It's a folk story. And when we say the word folk, like when we're talking about folk music, folk stories, what differentiates that is it's not a time frame reference for culture, or a sound, or for me, jazz evokes an emotion. And some people want to say that folk is just that, but it's different, and it's not. The thing that makes folk is that it's something that's it's like a verbal tradition. So it's something that's it's written, it's spoken, it's sang,
and it's a tradition. So a song like House of the Rising Sun, did I say a sun? I meant a song. A song like House of the Rising Sun is a beautiful example of a folk song because, well, for one thing, I can't figure out who to trace it back to. I've wanted to do a cover. I keep meaning to write down all the artists that I stumble upon, but there's, I mean, the Animals did it, Bob Dylan did it, Emmylou Harris did it, Sean Mullins did it. There's that new age, like metal opera singer guy, I think, who did, like, that's just 5. And there's so many more. And they all kind of have unique lyrics, and some of them even have the same lyrics, but they rearrange the verses. So when it comes to copyright infringement law and things like that, folk song is the most punk rock music there is, because you can't own it. Nobody knows really who owns House of the Rising Sun. Best we can tell is that it came from France a long time ago. So and it was about, if I remember right, it has links with sacred prostitution. It's a very old song. And when we encounter folk material, we feel that. So this is a folk story. It's an Inuit tale, and Clarissa uses it as a beautiful, beautiful example. This is foundational, and I remember re-stumbling upon this side by side with a man who I met. He was holding a copy of this book. And that whole experience was like the last time I needed to put my hand on the top of the hot wood stove, which cracks me up because I grew up in a ranch house that and it's funny because I've pretty much always lived in homes that were heated with wood heat. There were a couple of environments when we moved away from the ranch when I was young that we didn't, but then as an adult, and it wasn't on purpose, the places I lived were just always wood heat. So I've had plenty of opportunity to burn my hand and learn. So it's funny that I put my hand so hard, like I pressed down this last time on the wood stove with so much pressure and tried to shove this message down this masculine. And it's a really great illustration of like why the twin flame mythology exploded in my awareness at the time that I met this person. I was trying so hard to, and it's taken me a long time to process this. It wasn't until months after I finally dropped that puzzle that I started receiving the information that I needed about my mother to start the work. That I guess I realized that my mother gave me this miraculous thing. Like, the Harry Potter stories are funny to me because they're a good illustration of how dark or scary things can tend to make us feel as a collective. So like we all know that like the Death Eaters are bad, or we all know darkness is bad. And Harry is of the darkness. He, our hero in the mythos, is touched by darkness. We see him go through this story with like this mental link to evil. And it's, if we kind of turn that on its head, I guess, the thing that's really powerful and the thing that's really scary, even to evil, is the love of Harry's mom, right? So that makes sense to me, and I kind of understand why. The scariest things in us are made of light. And maybe I shouldn't say us, because I shouldn't be speaking for collective, but that bullet analogy that I keep circling around to with Lilith, she's encased in black, but she's full of light. She's a container. She's like this hidden container. She's like a sleeper cell. And the thing about it is just that I came into this world with such an awareness of that powerful love that my mom tucked in me, that I think I really approached others or other with way too much trust and just way too much of what translates into arrogance in the earth realm, about myself and my treasure and who I am. And I walk up to people and give them my treasure and say, like, aren't you happy? Like, can we play now? Can we play with this puzzle together? And they kind of look at what I just gave them and they're like, you just gave me a pile of rubble. And my eyes are sparkling and I'm spinning and spinning and I'm just like giggling. Yes, I did. Aren't you so happy? I made that for you. But it's not to them. It's rubble. It's garbage. So as I'm trying to shove this garbage in front of this guy's face and say, look at this treasure, I'm not looking at the treasure. So it wasn't until that was made... And he kept telling me, you're treating me like a villain, or, like he kept using these battle analogies, and I'm not the villain, I'm not your enemy. And I don't know, it's just interesting. It's like at the time I was looking at it from the past, and now I'm looking at it in the present. But the exercise was just for me to understand how painful the light is for most. And we read stories like Harry Potter and want to celebrate that light. We have to remember that things are like inverted, but there's a twist. When we're worshiping light and when we're standing in that light for too long, that's where the arrogance comes in. And that coin has two sides. So this is the story of the skeleton woman. And I encourage all of you to know that the fear you feel when you think about the darkness, that fear, lean into that. Your fear is your map to the treasure. Okay, so Inuit folktale. She had done something of which her father disapproved, although no one any longer remembered what it was. Her father had dragged her to the cliffs and thrown her over and into the sea. There the fish ate her flesh away and plucked out her eyes. As she lay under the sea, her skeleton turned over and over in the currents. One day a fisherman came fishing. Well, in truth, many came to this bay once, but this fisherman had drifted far from his home place and did not know that the local fishermen stayed away, saying this inlet was haunted. The fisherman's hook drifted down through the water and caught, of all places, in the bones of Skeleton Woman's rib cage. The fisherman thought, oh, now I've really got a big one. Now I really have one. In his mind, he was thinking of how many people this great fish would feed, how long it would last, how long he might be free from the chore of hunting. And as he struggled with this great weight on the end of the hook, the sea was stirred into a thrashing froth, and his kayak bucked and shook. For she who was beneath struggled to disentangle herself. I'm going to read that again. It came out in a mess. As he struggled with this great weight on the end of the hook, the sea was stirred into a thrashing froth, and his kayak bucked and shook, for she who was beneath struggled to disentangle herself. And the more she struggled, the more she tangled in the line. No matter what she did, she was inexorably dragged upward, tugged up by the bones of her own ribs. The hunter had turned to scoop up his net, so he did not see her bald head rise above the waves. He did not see the little coral creatures glinting in the orbs of her skull. He did not see the crustaceans on her old ivory teeth. When he turned back with his net, her entire body, such as it was, had come to the surface and was hanging from the tip of his kayak by her long front teeth. "Ugh!" cried the man, and his heart fell into his knees. His eyes hid in terror on the back of his head, and his ears blazed bright red. "Ah!" he screamed, and knocked her off the prow with his oar and began paddling like a demon toward shoreline. And not realizing she was tangled in his line, he was frightened all the more, for she appeared to stand upon her toes while chasing him all the way to shore. No matter which way he zigged his kayak, she stayed right behind, and her breath rolled over the water in clouds of steam, and her arms flailed out as though to snatch him down into the depths. "Ah!" he wailed as he ran round. In one leap, he was out of his kayak, clutching his fishing stick and running, and the coral-white corpse of Skeleton Woman, still snagged in the fishing line, bumpity-bumped behind right after him. Over the rocks he ran, and she followed. Over the frozen tundra he ran, and she kept right up. Over the meat laid out to dry, he ran, cracking it into pieces as his mucklucks bore down. Throughout it all, she kept right up. In fact, she grabbed some of the frozen fish as she was dragged behind. This she began to eat, for she had not gorged in a long, long time. Finally, the man reached his snow house and dove right into the tunnel, and on hands and knees scrambled his way into the interior. Panting and sobbing, he lay there in the dark, his heart a drum, a mighty drum. Safe at last. Oh yes, safe. Safe, thank the gods. Raven, yes, thank Raven. Yes, all bountiful Sedna. Safe at last. Imagine when he lit his whale oil lamp, there it lay in a tumble upon his snow floor, one heel over her shoulder, one knee inside of her rib cage, one foot over her elbow. He could not say later what it was. Perhaps the firelight softened her features, or the fact that he was a lonely man. But a feeling of some kindness came into his breathing, and slowly he reached out his grimy hands and, using words softly like a mother to a child, began to untangle her from the fishing line. Oh, no. First he untangled the toes, then the ankles. Oh, nah, nah, nah. On and on he worked into the night until dressing her in furs to keep her warm. Skeleton Woman's bones were all in the order a human's should be. He felt into his leather cuffs for his flint and used some of his hair to light a little more fire. He gazed at her from time to time as he oiled the precious wood of his fishing stick and rewound the gut line. And she in the furs uttered not a word. She did not dare, lest this hunter take her out and throw her down into the rocks and break her bones to pieces utterly. The man became drowsy, slid under his sleeping skins, and soon was dreaming. And sometimes, as humans sleep, a tear escapes from the dreamer's eye. We never know what sort of dream causes this, but we know it is either a dream of sadness or longing. And this is what happened to the man. Skeleton Woman saw the tear glisten in the firelight, and she became suddenly so thirsty. She tinkled and clanked and crawled over to the sleeping man and put her mouth to his ear. The single tear was like a river, and she drank and drank and drank until her many years long thirst was slaked. While lying beside him, she reached inside the sleeping man and took out his heart, the mighty drum. She sat up and banged on both sides of it, bum, 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 bum. As she drummed, she began to sing out, flesh, 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 flesh. And the more she sang, the more her body filled out with flesh. She sang for hair and good eyes and nice fat hands. She sang the divide between her legs and breasts long enough to wrap for warmth. And all the things a woman needs. And when she was all done, she also sang the sleeping man's clothes off and crept into his bed with him, skin against skin. She returned the great drum, his heart to his body. And that is how they awakened, wrapped one round the other, tangled from their night in another way now, a good and lasting way. The people who cannot remember how she came to her first ill fortunes say, and the fishermen, the people who cannot remember how she came to her first ill fortunes say she and the fishermen went away and were consistently well fed by the creatures she had known in her life underwater. The people say that it is true, and that is all they know. Sorry, there's a burp that I'm just really trying to not let happen. The only thing I wanted to kind of leave before I leave is that when we read tarot cards and when we meditate, when we're going in and we're finding that sacred space, we need to announce it to the vibratory energies who can hear us and who are around us. They need to be warned that if they come near us right now, they will be elevated. And before we know what our intentions are, before we know what we're here for, it's not, I'm not going to say it's not fair, but it's not just and right to raise the vibration or shine the light, if you will. Because light is radiation. And there's a special kind of magic that I think you have to be really, you have to be a serious black. Sacred prostitution and manipulating hungry ghosts so that they're challenged. That's black magic. That's really heavy. You have to be really good. And radiation is just, it's nothing to mess with. You don't burn people, I think I've done my burning. I think my dragon. I took my dragon for a walk yesterday, and I realized that the dragon is this big black dragon, and she comes out when it's really hazy and cloudy so that she can be hidden in the white clouds. And she's done coming out in the open. So I guess, here's your warning, hungry ghosts. I've been saying it every time I look at my decks, but I'm just going to keep saying it. I'm going to say it anytime I feel one. It's just beware. If you come near me, you're going to get burned. But if you're ready to get burned, I welcome you. I bid you well. Come in. But just know that that's radiation. It's not hugs and purrs and smiley faces and hand jobs.